Thanks for stopping by to check out another episode of Vintage Audio Review. In this episode I'm going to talk about this Yamaha RX-V2090, which was manufactured between 1993 and 1996. It actually graced the cover of Audio magazine, the April 1996 edition. The top is the DDP-1, which is the signal processor piece that was separate from this unit, and that would be here, and here's the 2090. So it did make the cover, and I kept this magazine because of that. It comes with two remotes. It has the main remote, and it has a secondary remote because you could use this in another room if you wired it correctly. It was about $1,500 back then and was rated at 100 watts per channel into the front three speakers, and I believe 35 watts a channel into the surround speakers. I will show a more detailed view of both the front and the back of the unit in just a minute or so. Up until a month ago, the Yamaha was my preamp for what I call my reference system, mainly because it had a remote control for the volume. I disabled the power amp portion of it and actually grounded out the inputs to the power amp, and it wasn't hooked up to anything. So it was strictly just used as a preamp. It worked very nicely as a preamp until I got the Carver CT sub. And so now we're going to check it out and see actually how it does. We do have specs in the magazine article, and some of those I will compare to how it performs today. I got this receiver free back in probably 93 or 94 when I had my repair business. I remember a little bit about getting it because it was a real nice piece, and the people had brought in the receiver as well as a microwave oven that they thought had stopped working due to a lightning strike. And I was able to confirm that the microwave oven did have some type of a surge to it, and this would come on, but there was the relays would click on, but it wouldn't do, you couldn't get any sound. And I told the people that it didn't act like a surge, but I would have to order a service manual and there would be some more time to track it down, and they told me that I could just keep it. Several years went by and I decided to purchase the service manual for it, and got in there and found out that it was a $1.29 transistor in the muting circuit, which I'll show a little picture of. I don't remember which of the two it was, but one of those was shorted, and so it was always being muted. Anyway, I fixed it and I've been using it on and off since then. Particularly the last couple of years it has been my preamp for the reference system. And now it will become the amplifier for my workshop system, which will sit right over there. So I've highlighted the muting circuit transistors in yellow. I don't remember which of the two was shorted, but one of them was shorted, causing the mute to always be on. So I will zoom in on it just so you can see it a little bit closer. But replacing one of those transistors solved the problem. Here we have the THD SNR going into the CD input, coming out of the preamp output. There is no spec for it. It is looking pretty good. It's got 2 volts in, 2 volts out, so 0 dB gain, and the SNR and the THD is looking really, really good. I should point out that the tone controls were flat and the effects were off. In this plot we have the volume set for maximum output, which was about 5 volts, 8 dB gain. The THD SNR still looks good, however the THD plus noise did degrade a little bit, but the most you're going to get out of this preamp section is about 5 volts, which is decent. Next we have the frequency response looking from the CD input to the preamp output with the volume control set to give 2 volts out. We can see that the left and right channels are balanced to within 0.64 dB, and we have a frequency response flatness of about half a dB for either channel. Here we have the THD SNR for the phono input, and that's a moving magnet input, to the tape monitor output at 5 millivolts input. Now the spec was for an output level of 1 volt, and I only have about 300 millivolts, so I missed hitting that exact requirement. However, the spec was 0.01% at 1 volt, and we're well under that for either channel at 300 millivolts, so probably it would look fine at 1 volt. Also, the SNR and the THD plus noise looks pretty respectable for a phono preamp. So this is the frequency response of the phono stage measured at the tape monitor output from 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz. And as you can tell, it's very flat, maybe 0.3 of a dB for either channel, and the channels are only separated by maybe 1/10 of a dB. So this is indeed the best phono preamp stage that I have measured to date. The spec for the frequency response for the phono stage was plus or minus half a dB, so this still exceeds that requirement. What we have here is the crosstalk of the phono stage at 10 kilohertz between the left and right channels. In this case, the right channel has the 46 millivolt signal applied, and the left channel is terminated into a load, and the amplifier is set for about 50 watts output. The original requirement was better than 55 dB, so we're about 2.5 dB less than that. However, the original spec requirement was not for this high of a power level, so in all actuality we're probably coming very close to meeting that if we ran with less power. Here we have the crosstalk of the phono stage again, except for we are looking at a frequency of 1 kilohertz going into the input of the phono stage. The spec for the 1 kilohertz condition is 60 dB or greater, and so we are meeting that. Once again, the amplifier is running at 50 watts, so we're probably meeting it much more than 1.5 dB. What we have here is the THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz for the CD input to the amplifier output with 8 ohm loads applied and the amplifier putting out 50 watts. The spec is 0.015% or better from 20 to 20 kilohertz, and this is just a snapshot at 1 kilohertz, but it's definitely meeting that requirement. And the SNR and the THD plus noise is looking pretty decent. So this graph shows the frequency versus THD from 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz with the amplifier running at 50 watts, which would be the green trace, and we are much less than the 0.015% THD spec requirement. So that is pretty encouraging for this amplifier. So the THD requirement from 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz for the preamp and power amp combined for the CD input would be less than 0.015% still. And for our right channel, we're definitely meeting that requirement. For the left channel, we're exceeding that requirement, and also the THD plus noise is about 15 dB worse for the left channel. However, overall it still is not bad. You can see the second harmonic distortion is the predominant one in this particular amplifier. The last piece of data I have is the frequency response with the amplifier going into 8 ohm loads and putting out 50 watts of power. The spec is less than half a dB variation across the band, and what we're seeing here is about 0.45 dB, so we're meeting that requirement. Also, the channels are very well balanced in this case. So as you can tell from the measurements, the Yamaha RX-V2090 performed really well and met its requirements from nearly 30 years ago. The only reason I stopped using it was that when HDMI came around, it kind of made the AV receiver portion obsolete. I did use it for a while as a preamp, and it does a real good job for that purpose. Right now I'm using it mainly as an amplifier in my workbench area. The other purpose it serves is as a phono preamp whose output I will take from the tape monitor and use an A to D converter for recording my old records. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're wondering what's going on in the background here, I'm on an Alaskan cruise and had a few minutes to finish this video for when I come back. So I thank you for watching. Please give me some comments and subscribe if you have not. Have a good day or night.